your weekly bonus corner Späti. It is Wahl Guide Part 2, where we do a rundown of the players in German politics. If you didn't catch Part 1 on the bonus on the main feed, I should say, sorry.
Yeah, this is the player circle.
Yeah, welcome to, you get the real tips. This is behind the paywall Hustlers Academy. Guide to German election. Part 1 we did
like, just on a complete separate note, I've been thinking of like, what are like cool like hotep ways to say what's up to your friends, and I've come up with what's the vision playa.
God damn it. I'll never get over that. Was like probably one of my favorite TikToks of all time, which is someone as a bit like did game over screens for poetry slams, where the person you lost to was doing this kind of like idle animation thing, like constantly moving back and forward while the number was counting down the screen, and they were just giving a little speech. And they had one for you lost to a hotel.
That rips.
And it's just at the end of it, just like at the end of it, it's like, ha ha ha, broccoli is man-made. It rules so much. I love it. I need to find that and save it somewhere. I just love the concept of poetry slam game over screen.
That slams. You know who else loves poetry, slam poetry? The Greens.
Who's that? The Greens, a slam poetry ass party until Volt makes it past the threshold.
We're not going to talk about them, unfortunately. I'm sorry for you, Ciarán.
No, we're not. Stay tuned in a month's time for Ciarán's Freak Party Part 3 of this.
Yeah.
That's right. All Volt, all Werte Union, Tierschutzpartei, Partei für die Tierschutz, which are separate. The Danish People's Party, or whatever they're called. It's also in favor of Frisian rights.
That's right, baby.
Frisians.
Yeah, this is like your version of like Lil Wayne's like the Dedication series.
Hey, look, you're like, this is the NFL. I'm over here with the college football league.
Yeah, this is where the real talent's found.
Yeah, absolutely. Some freak who was in the T-shirt. I would love if there was actually a career path for these people, that like someone in Die Partei could eventually become the leader of the SPD. Like if that was like a proven like career trajectory for these people. Otherwise, it's just pointless nonsense. Why are they in these parties? I don't know.
Oh yeah, like I saw posters for Die Partei the other day, and I was like on my phone. I was on the phone with my mom, and I just got mad, and I was like, "Why does this exist? Who is still voting for Die Partei?" And she's like, "What is that?" And I had to explain.
Oh man, Die Partei, the number one cause of rolling your eyes in Germany. But let's talk about the kind of like the B league of major German parties. This is what most of these parties are going to be getting below 10%, except for this first party we talk about.
Yeah, the Greens, I guess, are going to come into the second round of this because they're like, they may end up surprisingly in a coalition with the CDU. Like, I think that putting Habeck as their lead candidate has shown that they're willing to kind of do the like green capital thing. Mm-hmm. Their like policy like proposals also suggest that again, similarly to the SPD and the Greens, the main focus is revitalization of the German economy through tax breaks for businesses. Yeah. And then consumer incentives, like if you buy a electric VW, you'll get like cheaper like lease agreements and tax breaks and bullshit like that.
We talked about this before, the Green Party of like the party of the Lassenrad.
Yeah.
The cargo bike.
I saw the Greens campaigning the other day on a Lassenrad on a cargo
Absolutely
bike.
You did. That's right.
And yeah, and it's very weird because it's kind of like I mentioned this like very briefly within the election overview, which will be linked below in the show notes. Is that the debate of the fundies and the realos is done. It's
Oh God. Yeah.
It is. This is a thing that then is kind of it was a big thing in the 80s of like, do the Greens take more of like a like fundamentalist, like kind of like left-wing critique of environmentalism, or do they take a more like pro-green capital realpolitik sort of version?
And like the fundies also, regardless of critique, was also like the Greens in Germany did start as a protest movement.
Exactly. Yeah.
Unlike the Greens in Ireland, which started as a letter to the editor. Like they were always like Rialo's ass fucking party. But like the Greens in Germany, there were protests.
I mean, like low key, the RAF starts as a letter to the editor.
Sure. Hey, which way, Western man? And but like the Greens do have this kind of like radical protest tradition, and the fundies were like, we need to stay in tune with that. If the fundies still existed today, they would be trying to like, they'd be working with people like Letzte Generation.
I think that the fundies do still exist. They're like mostly the youth wing of the party, though. And that's quite common, though, for like every party. You're going to find the more like extreme, in quotes, wings of like the Jusos in the SPD are far more like traditionally social democrat. The Junge Union, the CDU's youth party, is much further right wing.
The based version of your party, like base, I think is the right word, right? Like the kind of like the purest essence, uncompromising version of the party is always found in the youth wing.
That uncut good shit.
Exactly. But then what I find really interesting about the Greens, because I do agree, like this debate is dead. They will kind of crack out their fundies credentials when they're campaigning.
Oh yeah.
Like
even with their kind of election posters, they have this concept where it's just like one of their main candidates, and then underneath it just has a word. And so for Habeck, it's Zuversicht, which means like whatever, like confidence in the future or whatever, some shit like that.
Oh, okay. Right.
You know, and for Baerbock, it is shit. What was it again? It's like something like far more like lib. I can't remember exactly what her like. I think it's like togetherness or something like that.
Yeah, I think I'm more thinking about the like 2021.
Let's talk about 2021 with the Greens.
We could, yeah, because I do kind of remember like 2021 during the campaign. Like the joke poster I made in 2021 for the show was I took a stock photo of a random woman and I just wrote in German on it. I turned it into the greenhouse style and wrote in German on it, "We have sacrificed this woman to NATO. Will you vote for us now for the love of God?"
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting point of the Greens, right? Is that then this is a party that then went into the like elections in 2021 still with those like fundamentals, dare I say, with like they were
kind of like half-ass, like they had to slap the stickers on their posters that they supported like Deutsche Wohnen Co. Enteignung, like the mass seizure of rental properties in Berlin, which should happen any day now. The referendum passed, right?
Yeah.
But then
I'm twiddling my thumbs over here waiting to get into an appropriated apartment, but
any day now,
right?
The German government is so committed to democracy and rule of law. It should happen any day now. Yeah, so like that, and I think there was also like posters that had like the Keine Atom like sticker on it. Which is, again, that's harking back to the fundy tradition, right?
Yeah, the like anti-nuclear power, anti-nuclear movement sort of thing.
And then like, but then their co-Spitzenkandidaten were like, as you rightly pointed out in 2021, the two people who, you know, signed the deal with the devil by becoming Realos and getting the ILF gun turned on them and being made hot.
Yeah.
Robert Habeck and Annalena Baerbock. Yeah, because like they're massive realos. Like,
oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, like, that was the thing too, is that in 2021 they ran Baerbock kind of with this like perception that they were going to be sticking to their like the like more fundamentalist tradition of the party. Feminist foreign policy has been her thing. Don't look into what feminist foreign policy actually is. It's mostly weapon shipments to Israel and genocide.
What it ended up being. I don't think it ever was anything.
Oh, it was a Clinton thing, like.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, that's a whole
Hillary Clinton. Yeah.
Yeah. No, not Bill Clinton. Just loved women so much.
He did. He really he did.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, like the Baerbock as the party head at that period of time, she was, I mean, remember Habeck was also in the discussions for leading the party as well. The discussion, like Habeck and the conservative wing of the party had discussions with the CDU of possibly forming a coalition alongside of them. Habeck is also perfectly fine with working with the CDU this time around. The question more or less is, do the CDU want to work with the Greens? And it's kind of a clear no, but they may have to, because the CDU wants the FDP in as a coalition partner, but that's not going to happen, as we'll talk about like later
in a few minutes.
Yeah, and the Greens have, again, like I said, they've kind of made green capital their like main focus. Similarly, again, to the SPD, their migration politic is just mirroring the EU's. Again, don't look into what that actually means. But to be fair, again, got to give credit where credit's due. Like, they do want to like preserve certain things, like the Germany ticket, which they're them and Die Linke are the only two parties that then are very explicit about the Deutschland ticket. And I think the SPD also wants to like maintain it to a degree. Even like the FDP, not Linda himself because he's against it, but like party functionaries of the FDP have also come out and said that this is like a vital part of like policy now. So
yeah, I think it would just piss off too many people if you got rid of it.
Oh, 100%. It is
Germany's had that sweet taste of it.
It's so good. It's I mean, like the Germany ticket was for a while cheaper than like a Berlin subscription for the public transit.
And it will be again.
Yeah, exactly.
Berlin government sucks dick.
Yeah. The CDU governance just gets you more shit, and we're gonna get this now on a federal level. I think that's like also the thing too, is that if you want to see how the CDU is gonna govern like federally, look at Berlin. Like everything sucks.
Everything does suck. I would disagree slightly, because I kind of feel like the CDU mentality with Berlin governments is like, first day in the office for Kai Wegner is just like, well, we're never going to be here again, so slash and burn, folks. Like, I feel like they come in swinging, particularly with Berlin, because it's such a rarity that like people ever vote for them.
Yeah, they only got in because no one went to the third election.
Yeah, exactly. So like, I do think they kind of come in with a more of like the word again, I think, is based. Right, like absolutely no consideration for the future, like last time when they bankrupted the Berlin government in the 90s. But like they just go in slashing and burning and just middle fingers akimbo in a way that I feel like they wouldn't at a federal level, because say what you will about the average German person, some of them do genuinely like the CDU.
Yeah. I mean, especially like the area that I live in.
Yeah, right?
But
yeah.
I guess exactly. Going back to the Greens, I think another thing that we kind of have to like talk about too is that then the Greens have been kind of targeted from every side politically.
Yeah,
Of like
especially 2021.
Especially in 2021 and like this current government, and the Greens probably more so than the than the SPD took most of the criticism of like why the government was bad. It was, oh, they were doing too much socialism and blah, 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 and too much green shit, and they were too much woke shit and whatever else you wanted to. Oh, the Greens are going to take your car. You're not allowed to have sex with your car anymore. That was like the insane amount of like headlines that you would just be seeing around this country. And weirdly, they've kind of found a base of around like, I mean, like I would say between like 12 to 15% of voters. And they've stuck there ever since they kind of had a surprise European Parliament election win, not this last European election, but the one beforehand. Where they got like 20, where they got like 20, almost 21%. And
because that is what brings the context for the 2021 election, because like to cast people's minds back, the headline story of 2019's EU election was the Green Wave, right?
Yeah.
And then that, I think there was several points in which that was proven to be a bit of a paper tiger, but German media picked up on it way too late.
Yeah.
So the entirety of the 2021 campaign was just constantly, it was bashing Die Linke, but for the purpose of like making the Greens look bad, forever daring to work with them in Berlin.
Yeah, exactly. And the Greens in 2021 were specific that they weren't going to work with Die Linke on a federal level, even if Die Linke got into government.
Yeah, because they correctly noticed that every like media person and every other party leader was like demanding they say that. It was like the Simpsons episode where everyone was like, "Say the line, Bart. Say the line.
Yeah.
Say you won't work with Die Linke. Say that you will kiss the feet of NATO."
And yeah,
it was really funny because like even the Die Linke leaders at the time, because they were like, you know, CDU, Welt people, or whatever, Axel Springer people were so gung-ho that they had to get like the Greens on record to say like, oh, you will support NATO. The only reason that was in question was because it was policy position of Die Linke to not support NATO. And they were completely ignoring the fact that like Die Linke was saying, actually, NATO is not our like top priority. If we were to go into a coalition government, which we would have to, there's no way we're getting like an outright majority in this election. We would happily compromise on this issue in favor of other things like minimum wage or like retirement age, blah, blah, blah. And people were just like, yeah, that's nice, Die Linke, whatever. We're not listening to you. Hey, Greens, what do you think of Die Linke and all the shit they said?
Yeah. And like, it is like the reason I guess I bring up this like stable, you know, thing of their like again, they're going to be polling. I mean, not polling. They're going to get probably like into the teens in at least the way that then polling is looking right now, about 5 weeks out of the elections, 5 weeks from tomorrow or 4 weeks.
They could have the exact same results they got in 2021.
Yeah. And I mean, they've kind of like found the like do-gooder liberal as their like go-to voter now. Like, kind of like, I am a good person because I vote for the Greens. There's no other real party that then kind of has that vibe in terms of German politics, and they've kind of like solidified themselves as like like Democrat voters in the United States of like, oh, I'm a good person for voting for this. I'm a well-intentioned lib, but the policies of the Greens are actually quite like, I mean, again, they're very malleable as a party, so they'll just go into a coalition, kind of like do what is then to be done. And the problem that they had going into 2021 is that they never really governed on a federal level. They'd only been in like local governments, and they kind of have been like all over the place. Because in like Baden-Württemberg, there's like a right-wing Green. In Berlin, there was a left-wing Green party. And
Baden-Württemberg was the like, what's the company that basically runs Stuttgart, the car company down there?
Oh, Mercedes.
Yeah. It was Mercedes Greens versus like the Berlin Greens with what's her name in her leather jacket looking like a cool divorced mom.
Oh, I forget her, but yeah, she looked cool.
Yeah. Ideologically, a lot of range across the entire party. But now I think post 2021, post coalition government, post October 7th, And also, like, to be fair, post-invasion of Ukraine, that has been squashed.
Yeah.
Greens now have a very clear national.
Yeah. They're probably the most Atlanticist party of Germany. They're also one of the only parties that then explicitly mentions that they are going to go well above the 2% GDP ratio of defense spending, which is bizarre to be coming from a party that then was very anti-war and very anti weapon shipments. That they they really just ditched that one immediately.
All of that.
And and the Greens are the ones that then had to also sign off on the shipment, the Airbus shipments of Eurofighters to Saudi Arabia, which they immediately did after October 7th, because Saudi Arabia is like, we need these to help our good buddies Israel, and the Greens were like, you're absolutely right. Let's not look at what you're doing in Yemen.
Well, no, it was actually, let's look explicitly at what you're doing in Yemen, because it was
true.
Because it was like, I hate that you're, destroying the nation, like the Yemeni people, with like, by being one of the richest countries in the region, back to the hilt with American military, to suddenly October 2022, actually, I love that you're destroying Yemen.
Yeah, exactly.
Back to the hilt by the largest military in the world and obscenely rich. It was completely farcical. I think the biggest. I'm not sure if I've talked to you this privately. I don't think I've mentioned on the podcast. I think the biggest voter base that has been betrayed by the Greens is probably like the Willkommenskultur people, because I think after the refugee crisis in 2014, there were a lot of, again, the kind of like good, well-intentioned liberals kind of went to the Greens as the anti-racist vote.
Yeah.
And now that has been completely undone. I think there's probably a lot of Germans asleep, not realizing what's happening, but the Greens are now the face of like the thing that is driving the new Islamophobia, racism in Germany. With the like Willkommenskultur and the like racist kind of aspect of the Greens is, they're really kind of like the face behind the militarism, which I think they signed up for with the invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah.
They made that a huge part of their identity, probably because of like the insecurity that was instilled into the party based on the 2021 campaign, where like you would have like a 6-way party debate, and all five leaders, like all of the other 5 parties, well, actually 4 of the other parties, Die Linke was ignored. We're just turning to the Greens being like, swear you love NATO. They get this opportunity to really prove that they love NATO. And they've kind of just signed up to like, they've kind of become like an East German party, or like not even East German party. They've become an Eastern European party, where like we just back America because we need to.
Yeah. They're like a bizarre, weird, like Latvian centrist party or something.
Exactly. Where like, because this is a real problem you have in like a lot of Eastern European politics, where parties you wouldn't suspect, who like in Western Europe would not be backing Israel, are backing Israel because you have to just go along with whatever America says because Russia is such a boogeyman.
Yeah.
And that like the whole, like, I think Greta Thunberg went and supported the Georgian protests, but was like met opposition because the fact she went in a kefir. Like that kind of shit happens in Eastern Europe, and it's really weird that like basically they've adopted that politics.
Yeah.
They've stumbled into it, which I find fascinating.
But I think that there's not going to be a question about then like where the Greens stand this time around. I think it's very clear, like you mentioned. Like I think that's a very good like comparison of they are the most pro-US Atlanticist party, even though like the SPD and CDU like are in a way. The CDU traditionally has actually been a little bit more I don't want to say like anti-American, but they kind of want like German independence, on issues where even like Merkel had negotiated. Remember, like Merkel negotiated for Germany not to be compliant with US sanctions to Russia. And that was a big deal when that happened. And the CDU kind of, I think rightfully can look at then the governance of the SPD and be like, hey, they're a little bit too beholden to the Biden administration. But then here's where the problem comes in, is that then the CDU also loves Trump. So
like a portion of it definitely does.
Yeah.
And Yeah, so I think an interesting way I would think about this, right, is if you took all the six parties, I guess we're seven now because I guess BSW has to be acknowledged. But like if you took those like major parties of German politics, there are two things I like to think about. One, I think I've said on the podcast before that I think a CDU voter is more likely to be convinced on the like Israel Palestine issue. I feel like I would, if I was having a one-on-one conversation with someone who like votes CDU, I think I could probably get them on the Palestinian side faster than I could a Green voter.
Oh, 100%. I do agree with that.
Yeah, because like people who are confused by that or whatever, but like a lot of CDU voters are just like good Christians and have taken the Pope's position basically.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
Yeah, because like the whenever you do polling about like in Germany about like, oh, has Israel gone too far? It's like it's now in the like low 70s. And like statistically, because it's the default party of Germany, a lot of those people have to be CDU voters.
Yeah. And I mean, like, this is a thing too, that then like the AFD is the party that then is campaigning on the fact that they love they love Israel more than any other country or any other party. The CDU like has criticized the SPD for not being nice enough to Israel or whatever, some shit. But it's kind of one of those things where I wonder like if that's a campaign tactic or if that's their actual like.
And also I'm really separating out voters from parties.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Then the other thing that I think about, and this maybe goes to the parties more specifically, is which parties would be on board with the kind of like Macronist Europe as a pole of the world, strategic independence, blah, blah, blah thing. And CDU and SPD, I think, would be way more on board with that, like shifting world order or whatever, than the Greens.
Yeah, the Greens are like campaigning on we have to defend like liberalism sort of thing. And they see that through strengthening Atlanticism.
Yes. So, and I think other parties are too like institutional and self-interested that if that kind of like Europe as the third pole ever became feasible, which is to say like would make sense like economically, they would be like, go where the money is. And they just be like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. But anyway, speaking of money, I guess we can move on to the next party.
The money party.
The money party, the FDP. Now,
the soon-to-be unemployed money party.
Soon-to-be unemployed money party. I could not be happier about this. The one, like, silver lining in all this is that then the FDP, in doing their, like, big-brained, we are going to sabotage the coalition, which they have been doing since the beginning. And when the memo came out, did you read through any of the memo?
I didn't read the memo. I really want their presentation that they gave. Because it was like, was it a part of it that they got found out because the like PowerPoint slideshow presentation had been leaked?
So one of the points that's really funny to me about this is that then the FDP, when they sabotaged the government in this like D-Day memo, were specifically saying that then Germany is becoming a planned economy and we need to save Germany from socialism.
Fucking God.
So they are...
Jeez.
They are cranks. And I think that then that while the AFD may be the most like insane party in terms of like racist rhetoric and neo-Nazism and this and that and all that kind of bullshit, the FDP is the most brainwashed ideologues of like any of these parties. They and it's kind of like the people who are sticking around of this like around 4% that we're seeing them pull at currently are the people who are like ride or die Lindner supporters. And it is bizarre to me that this man is still like has the confidence to run as their head candidate. I bet the FTB would do better and maybe would get into government if they removed Lindner as the head of their party, but that's never going to happen because they have created, or he has rather created, this image that the party is him. Very funny for a guy who claims that he hates cults of personality, but you know, whatever.
Yeah. That was always like the central irony of that party, right? Or like the Lindner FTP. Also, it's coming to bite him in his ass because he's not going to get the direct mandate thing because like I could totally imagine like wherever he runs, he gets like, you know, that first vote preference thing. But who else? Like who gives a shit about anyone else in the FTP? He has made it so about him that there isn't a second and or third person FDP candidate you could vote for.
Well,
like
and
I find it very hard to believe.
yeah, and that was the thing too, is that then there were some people in the party just came out after the government collapsed and were just like, he's a megalomaniac, he's this, he's that. Volker Wissing, who was the transportation minister, left the FDP so he could stay in the government because he's like, I just don't care.
He is the truest FDP member. Fuck party loyalty. Get that back.
Exactly. So it is very funny to me that then, I mean, yeah, like the irony of the hyper individual. I mean, there's no irony in the hyper individualist party having a man who's really full of himself be the like egotistical maniac behind the reins. Just the fact that then that Lindner himself has been pretty much the reason why this party is in free fall. Remember too, they're also coming off of a very weird stint where like the youth vote really helped them, particularly from, as you've pointed out many times in the show, from like Twitch streamers.
Yeah. So like that was like one of the places that people could point to, and it was certainly like the funniest. The thing that so in 2021 it was pretty clear, like there was a youth vote, and then the youth vote in Germany was gendered. So like if you were under the age of 25 and you were voting, who you were voting for was determined whether you were a guy or a girl. If you were a guy, you were voting for FDP. If you were a girl, you were voting for the Greens. And like FDP, I think my pet theory is that, and I think I said this on Spaßbremse on the election episode we did way back then. My pet theory, and I still hold on to this, is that a lot of Germans don't grow up very quickly. Like the whole idea of like Germans stay in college for a very, very long time. And I do think college shelters you from aspects of reality to an extent. I don't believe it to the like same extent like conservative Americans do, or that you're like that forever. But like I really do think that a lot of the youth vote who were voting for like FDP in 2021 graduated and discovered what the labor market was like.
Yeah, I think so
like,
too.
Fuck this. Fuck voting for this guy.
Yeah. And it really like, I think that there's first that. I also think it's like two, the sense of the voters that then went to the Greens, I think kind of stayed a little bit more because they kind of were coming from like that activist wing. Those people traditionally are more active and vote more.
The Greens also offer more to like middle class professionals than the FDP does. The FDP offers them nothing.
Yeah. And I guess just like kind of to wrap the FDP up here, because there's really not much to talk about them. They're running on a CDU platform for everything. Their voters have moved to the CDU and their donors have moved to the CDU. Now,
I also would not be surprised if some of those voters have gone AFD.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. But just generally speaking, they're doing like a tough on migration thing. They're doing this, they're doing that. They're doing they want to deregulate everything. They want to get rid of the bureaucracy of the German state. Blah 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 blah.
If anyone breaks the Schuldenbremsen, Christian Lindner will commit seppuku on fucking national broadcast television.
Let's do it, baby. Yeah, the only two parties that want to keep the Schuldenbremse are the FDP and the Greens. I mean, not FDP and the CDU. The Greens and the SPD are talking about the Schuldenbremse reform, and I don't know what that necessarily means, but I think that they're at least a little bit more realistic by being, hey, this is stupid, because it is. Germany, in order to kind of like revitalize its economy, needs to spend a lot of money. And this can't exist in, like this is a backwards economic idea for the largest economy in Europe. But Lindner,
it will make things worse.
Yeah,
Lindner, like austerity in Germany right now will make things worse.
And the thing is that the CDU wants the FDP to get into government because after Lindner crashed the government, Merz said that he would offer Lindner a position as the finance minister. So can't really offer that position when you're not in the government. So.
And like, yeah, he would burn his entire party to just do it again. Like he's profoundly stupid.
Yeah.
But then again, like maybe stupid's too harsh, because I think what more accurately describes it is like self-interested. Like the party will burn as long as I get to be finance minister again. And like he's also one of those people that strikes me as like similar to Trump in that way of like after he retires from politics, I can't imagine him giving two flying fucks what happens to the FDP.
Oh no, 100% he won't care.
There's not like a success. Like, we can talk about successor crisis in the FDP, but that's a crisis that he's completely unfazed by. He does not give a shit.
Yeah. He'll fade into the background, going 200 kilometers an hour on his Porsche into the sunset. But yeah, I mean, there's really not much else I'd say to kind of talk about the FDP. I am hoping they don't get in the government. If they do, I'll eat a bunch of cobwebs or something.
It would be very surprising. Like, they are like, in relative terms, based on average polling at the moment, they are the biggest losers.
Boom.
Of this coalition. Like, it is miraculous that the Greens are basically probably going to get the same results they did last time. The SPD is going to have a historically bad result, but like, we're talking about one of the major default parties.
Yeah, they're gonna be in parliament. Whether or not they're governing is a different question. But yeah,
the FDP had a 200% relative terms drop.
Yeah,
like, it's going from 11.4 to 4%.
Let's make that 300%, baby, if that's even possible. But I don't think so.
Negative numbers.
Negative 1%. Yeah.
A substantial percentage of Germans went in and wrote on their ballot just not FDP.
Yeah.
They were spoiled ballots, but they still counted.
Exactly. Yeah, it's going to be like in that one fake primary that they held for what's her name, Nikki Haley, where then no candidate won. Like the not no candidate, but like the block that said no candidate.
Oh god, yeah. Right. So, and that's all we can say about the FDP, but other than bye bitches, I don't know.
So let's round this off with another party that's not going to get in. Absolutely not. And we have to talk about them because they're currently in the government. And that is, unfortunately, the party that I think has the best platform, which is Die Linke. Yes, I'm biased. I think that Die Linke... All right, let's just go through this really quick. Okay, the Die Linke, party policies are as such. Okay, so we can start from then, the defense stuff. They want to decrease German military spending, and they want, disarmament of the German military. That's great. They want the removal of propaganda from schools in Germany. They want a decrease in NATO participation. They want a stoppage of German weapons exports. They want the removal of German troops overseas. And then on migration, they want to stop deportations. They support for right for refuge in Germany, and they want to create safe asylum routes for asylum seekers in Europe. And then on economic things, they're very good in that they want a 15 euro minimum wage. They want to pass a 30-hour work week, full-time work week, more investment for vocational education, equal social securities and sick leave for all forms of employment, not just full-time employment, but part-time. And then mini and midi jobs, which are these other kind of contracts, and automatic permanent contracts for employers to give employees. So their policies on the domestic level, or not even just domestic, but in defense stuff, I can't pick a bone with it. I think that is a good. I wish their policies should be the policies of realistically, if the SPD was a social democratic party, that should be the goal.
Oh, like on any objective terms, Die Linke is not
they're not a leftist
socialist
party. No.
No, they're a sock dem party.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's just kind of a statement of how far to the right, not necessarily even recently, but Western democracies have gotten since.
It's the 20, 30 years or so. Yeah. Since the fall of the Soviet. Yeah, true. Yeah, since Reagan. But so there's and of course they want Enteignung, the expropriation of housing. Mm-hmm. They want a rent ceiling. All good policies, and they're not going to make the government. They're not going to make the parliament. They're obviously not going to be in government. This is just kind of a thing of I wish that there could be some other form of a party that then could do this, because it's more, I think, not the message, but rather the messenger. That's the problem here.
Yeah.
And
I mean, to my point last episode, I think the German public can really tell when a party does not have its shit together.
Absolutely.
And they will punish them appropriately.
Yeah, and Die Linke doesn't have their shit together. And I think it's one of the things I remember having I think this is like an episode of Spaßbremse that they did with Lauren Ballhorn, who is a member of Die Linke and is one of the lead editors at Jacobin, where he talked about that like Die Linke was going around to like campaigning, and they were saying, hi, are you a member of the precariat? And it's just like, you don't do that, like they have, they're far too much riddled with their like academic nonsense, which is obviously going to be a problem for any left-wing party. But they also have an inability, I think, like other parties in Europe do, where they can kind of build coalitions of left-wing parties. Die Linke was kind of that formation because they were like two parties that then came into one. We're not going to talk about their like roots in the SED. I personally don't care about that, but that's also one of the reasons why they do so poorly in the West, because people think of them as this continuation. But they really have a strong like a massive gap between like the activist realm of the party that then doesn't understand what working class people are like, that then want working class politics, and they kind of talk down to everyone. I guess it's this kind of like, provincial and like metropolitan divide, because
we talked about it in 2021, and it's still kind of true. Party of East German cities, and I do think, like, I'm gonna come out and say it. I think it's very possible that they just do 2021 again, where they get the direct mandates and they get into the parliament again that way. Like, really shitty raw percentage vote, but like I haven't really heard anything to suggest that like those direct mandate people that got in last time are any less unpopular in the places they got in.
No, for sure. And I mean, it's the sense too of like the thing that then really hit them as well. Like the reason why they had to exit out of the government was because the Bundestag or the BSW formed. So 11 or 12 members of the BSW, one of them being Wagenknecht herself, left the left fraction in government and collapsed that grouping.
Yeah. So like, oh man, yes, actually, I guess that does change the math because the BSW wasn't there last time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Die Linke, because other thing we haven't really actually mentioned yet, but we should probably. This isn't a full term. This is snap elections.
Yeah, of course.
So like this realistically probably wasn't as much time as Die Linke thought they would have to regroup. I don't think
especially exactly, especially after a massive party split. Like that is kind of, and I think that then people are also, like you said, people can kind of sense that that they don't have their shit together because the formation of BSW. And the party itself is kind of like really shitty to their own party. They've expelled members for being pro-Palestine, which is fucking garbage.
Yeah.
They have on the federal level a very problematic position towards Israel, which is not very leftist
but then, like,
of them.
A lot of people who are pro-Palestinian politicians who are like notable figures in this country are like Die Linke members.
Yeah, like Fat Kolchak is like probably like one of the most notable that I can think of, who like has come to a bunch of like Palestine shit.
But like, regardless, I think for a lot of Germans, regardless of their position on Israel Palestine, which I think for a lot of Germans also is probably not front of mind. They're probably more concerned with economy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But like, they can acknowledge that like, oh, Die Linke has both anti-Palestinian and pro-Palestinian people in it. That looks schizophrenic. That looks disorganized. They can't. Again, that's just more communication of like, you don't have your shit together. Bundestag Wagenknecht, as like a criticism from a left perspective, is a friend of the show. I'm not going to name names, but she kind of made the point of like the problem with Bundestag Wagenknecht is he can't really do entryism. He can't really come in and like change how it works internally because it like doesn't really have that kind of like internal democracy.
Yeah. BSW is hyper authoritarian internally from like what has been kind of reported about how it functions. It is literally its namesake. It is what Wagenknecht wants. And they'll
which
like
is always what she wanted. That was her criticism of Die Linke, is that she couldn't rule Die Linke.
Yeah. She always kind of, I mean, I guess we can just go and just talk about then BSW right now, because it's
impossible not to talk about the two in the same breath.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And it's kind of this thing that then like Wagenknecht was always kind of like considered a more conservative member of her own party, particularly in like migration issues, and made Yeah, and then like has always, while a member of the like Die Linke had tried to start her like Aufstehen movement or her like stand up movement,
Which
which
was like an attempt at a coup in Die Linke, basically.
yeah, and it boiled down into complete irrelevance quite quickly. It still exists for some reason. I don't know why. But you know, she's always like it's kind of I similarly to like Lindna, but I guess in a more successful sense. She is also like a similar type of like megalomaniac where like she has to be in complete control of everything. She is the face of the party of the BSW. It is her way or the highway in that regard, and she has a lot of like loyal followers within Die Linke itself, who then of course then came over. Like I remember 11 other people alongside of her.
I think the only difference in that kind of like megalomaniac comparison is that like Sarah Wagenknecht has opinions that do actually represent a substantial portion of Germans. Christian Lindner doesn't.
Yeah.
Like,
and I mean, the thing is too that then's very interesting, of course, is that then like because everyone tries to like group in BSW as being a far left party, and Wagenknecht has been very specific about not even remotely calling this party socialist. I don't know what they are, to be honest. They kind of just seem like if you created a horseshoe theory party in some regards.
Yeah, it's I've seen other kind of like EU elects brain people trying to like categorize BSW, and while I don't necessarily agree with any of the categorizations, I do find the attempt to categorize it fascinating. And like one of the ones that they kind of landed on is the term like anti-progressive left or anti-woke left.
Yeah, like it is kind of funny in the sense of like that you bring that up because they do in their like if you look at them what the party stands for, they're like we're an anti-racist, anti-fascist like party, this and that. They don't say anti-capitalist if I'm not mistaken. Party, and then directly below that it says that they're against cancel and woke culture.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's amazing actually. Doing the side-by-side comparison of BSW with Die Linke is fascinating, where like how I think the German public views one as disorganized and the other one as not, because like they view BSW as organized even though that their positions are not. They're weird and they're contradictory. At the same time, like Die Linke's positions are actually like cohesive. They flow into each other. They make sense that they support this, then that they would support that. But their leadership seems kind of like incoherent, and it's really the German craves authoritarianism. It's like
not even the cool kind either, though. Like really, it's just like, oh, what if I like I'm authoritarian in the sense of that then I am pro like you know Kulturkampf, not in the sense that then like I will use the state to like preserve like cool things.
Yeah, it's really strange. Yeah, the attempts to categorize this party have been weird.
I think I hate to agree, but I think that then like anti-progressive, I wouldn't say left, I would say like center left would be like a good.
So do you want to know who, like, when categorizing this, do you want to know who other parties on the European stage went into this category?
Who? Tell me.
And I think this is food for thought, right? Because so I was specifically watching TLDR News, which is like a YouTube news channel, very EU elects brain.
Yeah.
It's fascinating for good little news bites, but at the same time, it's also interesting that like, what do libs think of this? Who are like way too close to like Brussels politics to see the forest from the trees. Anyway, the two parties that they kind of mentioned in the same breath as Bundestag was Smer from Slovakia, Robert Fico's party, and the 5-Star Movement from Italy.
Okay, yeah, that kind of like some wings of the 5-Star Movement kind of makes sense.
I mean, yeah, but some wings of the 5-Star Movement can fit in everything.
Like, yeah. The thing though too with Wagenknecht is that then, like as I mentioned too, similarly with the AFD, for two reasons. One, their stance on Russia is not just like that they want like a ceasefire in Ukraine and this and that and that. They are like very pro-Russia. Like Wagenknecht has been a very controversial in kind of like denying Russian war crimes and stuff like that on like in Germany. And as I mentioned too, there is that very weird bank account that is probably connected to Russian money. And similarly with the AFD as well, they want to remove sanctions on Russia and they want like the flow of like Russian natural resources into Germany, because that is like one of the things that then kept the German economy, you know, functioning, was cheap access to natural resources and cheap labor.
The I think I also brought it up on the show, but like that Washington Post story from, I want to say like a year ago now, it was before BSW was formed, about how like Russia wanted a coalition of like AfD, Die Linke, and BSW. What would eventually become BSW.
Yeah.
And I was just remembering thinking like, man, that really just describes Russian covert stuff, right? Because I totally believe some guy in Moscow was handed like the memo of like, make this work, make this insane plan work. But like,
yeah, we need to be very clear about this. Although like BSW is silly about like, I mean, they are like their migratory politics are problematic, and they're like the CDUs, and they're also pro like these third party state things, and they're bad.
The trans stuff as well. Like trans stuff.
They like are explicit in their sense that they do not like the AfD. Like,
yeah, and like their voter bases, I think, are the same. Like this was always something that I think people always looked at like, oh, this former Die Linke voter is now voting AfD, someone in the middle of like rural Saxony. And it's just like, that's super interesting. And then when they kind of like, oh, that is fascinating. That's a fascinating phenomenon. We should look at that. We should observe that. What's going on here? And then they would be like, oh, and one day the Die Linke and AfD are going to get together. It's like, no matter how many people flip-flop between these two parties, they could never work together because they would alienate the other half of their base.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's never going to happen. It's going back to Bundestag, Wagenknecht, and the Russia stuff, though. I think I mentioned this on the this was brought to me on the Guten Tag Berlin podcast that I did an episode on, where they mentioned like how she walked out of Zelensky giving a speech, and her rationale was, he doesn't want to like go to the negotiating table with Russia, therefore I will not listen to him. And I was like, that's not what a pro-peace candidate would do. Like a pro-peace candidate would like listen to Zelensky.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to like agree with everything he's saying, or like you can still make that criticism of him, whatever, but you wouldn't like walk out. That's such an insane spectacle thing to do.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's true, but it's the but
it's such a weird position to take, because like, and also like anyone with their head screwed on straight is just like, yeah, but like Zelensky is the military leader of a country currently at war. Of course he's going to be saying no compromise. Like, how you can't be the leader and not get like killed by some general by going around saying like, "Oh, let's compromise." Like,
yeah,
that's not going to happen. It's such a, I think like with the pro-Russian stuff, like she's not like, at the very least, what I can say without doing libel, she's not doing herself any favors to dismiss those rumors.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess on that note, that's like all the parties. That's all the I don't think there's.
And now for a 2-hour discussion on Volt.
No, yeah, exactly. Part 3, the dedication. Part 3, Volt.
Part 3. Yeah, I would actually. Can I get that on the Wikipedia page for this election? Like, who is running?
No, please, no. We're not. Volt is getting no.
We're not doing that now. But
no.
I do kind of like that as a gag episode. I'm just like, who the fuck are these clowns?
Yeah, what's her name? They just have like mononyms now, which is great.
Oh yeah,
Maral,
I've seen the kind
or
of
whatever
like
it says.
they've clearly, like, okay, only bold thing I will say is they've clearly fallen out with that weird Hamburg-based graphic design agency that did their branding for them, because like these news posters look like ass.
They look very terrible, and there's only one. Like, I've only seen one type throughout the city, so
yeah, that's also a bad sign.
Anyway,
running out of money.
Thank you for sticking around for both parts. We're sorry that we can't be a bit more optimistic with these elections, but you know, we at least can give you an overview of all these great contenders.
And also at the same time, sorry, not sorry if you thought you were coming for like a recommendation of who to vote for. We can't tell you.
We can't tell you what to do. And you know, to anyone who's going to complain about why didn't you talk about X party that I care so much about, they're not making it. Sorry, they're not worth the time and effort and energy to do a review on. So if you're like, why didn't you talk about Classic Klasse? Or why didn't you talk about the DKP? Or why didn't you talk about Mera? Or why didn't you talk about this? Go look it up for yourself. You'll see why we didn't talk about them, because
it's not happening. I mean, like, hey, there's a bunch. Hey, there's a bunch of parties out there that if you just want to vote but don't want any like consequences, or just want to feel like that you didn't give a vote to any of these objectionable parties, go for it. Hey, have fun. Have fun. Hey, you know what? Print out a document at home and just fill it in yourself. Like,
you too can vote in the German elections if you just do it in that way.
Not even a ballot, just any form, a registration for a doctor's office. Just fill it out. Have fun. Get a pen.
But yeah, so I hope that you all enjoyed that. And as mentioned previously, the entire readout is down below. I mean, I think we talked about more in the episode than I do in the handout, but if you want to share it with your friends, you know, or you can just read over it. You know a little bit more about the parties going into this election, so you can feel smart and win debates. That's the real reason why you're here.
Yeah, and that piece also that like Nick wrote does go a bit more into history of the parties that if you're a regular listener of Corner Späti, we would assume you would know, but there's some stuff in there you might know. And again, if you're sharing to someone who doesn't listen to Corner Späti, or if you're a new listener and you're still kind of catching up with German politics, there's a lot of good info there.
And on that note, we will see you guys on the main feed. Take care.
Ciao, ciao.